Is this thing on? Okay, the toilet paper hoarding conundrum. So we're 5 weeks into shelter in place, and it's still hard to find toilet paper. I've never seen anything like it, but did you know this isn't our nation's first paranoia-induced toilet paper shortage? Turns out there's a lot we didn't know about this basic consumer product. So in this post, I'm going to delve into the following: the Great Toilet Paper Famine of '73, non-pandemic toilet paper hoarding, how unnecessary toilet paper actually is, the psychology of toilet paper stockpiling, and toilet paper hoarding as microcosm. Microcosm, there's a real English major word for you. But don't worry, I'm not going to get all egg-headed on you. How could I with such a low topic? So, a little visual aid here. Come on. Look at these stoked shoppers. The one saying to the other, look, not only do they have toilet paper here, but it's our choice of brands. It's like 2019. The Great Toilet Paper Famine of '73. The world has seen pandemics before. It's actually seen worse. But this bizarre toilet paper hoarding, actually, that's happened before too. And what's more, there was no global crisis precipitating it. This was back in 1973. It all started with a congressman who was irritated with a relatively unimportant pulp paper shortage, which was allegedly caused by companies that increased paper exports to avoid federal price controls. So this congressman took to the American media to drum up support for his constituents. And the press ignored him, and then he reframed the issue as a potential toilet paper shortage. And this they kind of jumped on, as did news agencies globally. Pockets of Americans started stockpiling, though this fell short of a national phenomenon. And then Johnny Carson got involved. So Johnny worked the news tidbit into his opening routine. Oh, thanks. So he worked it into his opening routine, and so he's struggling to keep a straight face. And he declared, I want to tell you, it is serious. So after that broadcast, everyone went nuts and started hoarding toilet paper, just as we are now. Perhaps they were being even sillier, believing in a non-existent supply problem without even having an ostensible cause to point to. Even before the Carson piece, the Scott Paper Company went on television to confirm that production was as high as ever. So, is it ever rational to second-guess the toilet paper supply? There certainly are circumstances in which it's rational to expect a dearth of toilet paper. One of these is large public events. So I learned early on to bring my own toilet paper to bike races, as the portable toilets often run out. So one year at the Everest Challenge stage race, a guy coming out of the Sanilet warned me, dude, there's no paper. I'd use my arm warmers. And I thought he was joking until I got in there. It was totally disgusting. Fortunately, I planned ahead. The other time you should BYOTP is when traveling to certain countries. Some of them simply don't use toilet paper. More on this later. And others tend to run out due to theft. A Quora discussion on the topic, why is there no toilet paper in Chinese public toilets, tackled this apparently widespread problem. A few respondents explained the rationale behind the behavior. So one guy wrote, it's because they used to be poor or they are actually poor now. In 2018, Chinese per capita disposable income is 28,228 yuan, or about 4,000 American dollars per year. And rural people's per capita disposable income is 14,617 yuan, or about $2,000 a year, 40 yuan per day. So let's say one roll of toilet paper is maybe 2 yuan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. So it's almost 1/20th of rural people's income for one day. Oh, thanks. So that other person wrote, for some old people, extreme poverty had a destructive influence on their morality. Stealing will let you survive, and being lawful makes you and your children starve to death. So one correspondent even, how do you work this thing? One correspondent even provided this handy footage here of toilet paper theft. I guess that's security camera footage there. So, yeah. So, lest you think internet randos are the only ones reporting on this, the New York Times wrote about how technology is being used in China to address the problem. So they wrote, the authorities in Beijing are fighting back, going so far as to install high-tech toilet paper dispensers equipped with facial recognition software in several restrooms. Before entering restrooms in the park, visitors must now stare into a computer mounted on the wall for 3 seconds before a machine dispenses a sheet of toilet paper precisely 2 feet in length. If visitors require more, they're out of luck. The machine will not dispense a second roll to the same person for 9 minutes. So here's your footage of that process. Still, the prevalence of toilet paper theft is subject to exaggeration. One person in the Quora thread chimed in to state that he generally has no trouble finding toilet paper, and he even shared this photo of the method they use to deter waste. I might have to steal that idea for my own home and install a nice handy guide like that. So, is toilet paper even necessary? Sometimes, as I mentioned before, a Westerner's inability to find toilet paper is a matter of foreign custom. Russians, for example, used scrap paper until fairly recently. As described, and there's a link in my blog, obviously, but their first toilet paper factory was built in 1969, and due to low output, the product was strictly rationed. One citizen recalled, the lucky ones who managed to buy it would thread rolls on a string and walk home wearing their spoils like a necklace to the envy of passersby. This scarcity of toilet paper in Russia continued for decades. A respondent to this other Quora thread wrote, I was in Russia for 1 month in 1985. There were baskets of ripped up newspapers in each bathroom stall. A friend of mine who visited in the 80s reported a similar scenario, and in fact accidentally walked in on 2 maids as they were cleaning his room. And they were caught red-handed with a roll of his toilet paper that he'd brought from home, passing it back and forth and giggling. It must have seemed absurdly posh to them. Moreover, many countries simply don't want toilet paper. This other fascinating thread provides lots of testimony from people, mainly in India, who consider it disgusting that anybody uses toilet paper instead of water. Some examples. This guy wrote, unless I live in a desert, I would never want to carry my mess in my pants for days. Another person wrote, let's imagine a crow shits on your shoulder or head. Will you still use a tissue paper to clean it? And a third person wrote, water is more efficient and practical for a populous country like India, where we have plenty of rivers and ponds. It will be quite impractical to switch to tissues. And then this valiantly but imperfectly translated assessment actually blames the Western toilet paper tradition for the Black Death. Britain, enraptured from crapping from the windows within the 18th century and victimization pans to shit in rooms so somebody carry it and inflicting plague and Black Death to toilet rolls. We washed our bottoms and washed our hands at the moment, so no plague, no Black Death. One helpful respondent offers this challenge. Put some Nutella on your right hand, then wipe it off with a piece of paper, preferably toilet paper. Put some Nutella on your left hand. Now wash this with water, preferably a faucet. No, thanks. I'm good. Now touch and smell both the hands. The right hand would smell of Nutella, and you may feel some remnant on it too. But the left hand neither smells of Nutella nor is there anything to touch. Now imagine, put your bodily waste instead of Nutella. Now tell me, which is more hygienic? From the same thread, I learned that Pakistanis also prefer water to toilet paper, that Italians also do, and that an American who lived in India for 38 years learned to prefer water to toilet paper. He writes, "There is nothing better than a jet of water to pressure wash the exhaust port of your Death Star." So within this anti-toilet paper context, it's hard for me to understand why, at a time when people all over the world are dying of a horrible virus, Americans are getting so worked up about their preferred method of cleaning up. What's the big deal when toilet paper alternatives clearly exist? Maybe it's because America is also out of hand sanitizer? Which brings us to the psychology of toilet paper stockpiling. Chances are lots of people hoard toilet paper simply because others are doing it. Imitation is perhaps the quintessential human behavior. It's how we all learn to talk, after all. Where such copycat behavior is concerned, rest assured, very little contemplation of supply chain fundamentals is going on. Beyond that, this hoarding behavior may give us some sense of control at a time when we feel we have little. As articulated by an article in The Conversation, stocking up on toilet paper is a relatively cheap action, and people like to think they are doing something when they feel at risk. The article also points out modern economies run on trust and confidence. COVID-19 is breaking down that trust. People are losing confidence that they will be able to go outside and get what they need when they need it. I have to think that... Oh, thanks. I have to think the CDC's reversal on wearing masks hasn't helped maintain this trust. You don't need masks, they told us, and look what happened. Those who defied the CDC and hoarded masks anyway are now almost the only people who have them. In this way, cynicism and distrust have been reinforced. Toilet paper hoarding as microcosm. There is no overall supply problem with toilet paper, and actual usage of this product is not increasing. If anything, we're all scared shitless. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Therefore, if nobody altered their behavior in any way, that is, if they purchased toilet paper on the same schedule they always have, we would all continue to have plenty. And yet, in the short term, we don't, because too many people are behaving irrationally. It doesn't take unanimous foolishness to create a problem, just a critical mass. After all, it doesn't help me to think rationally about the toilet paper factories running at full capacity, because irrational behavior is creating outsized demand. The shortage, in short, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The paranoid and/or highly organized types have far, far more toilet paper than they need, while the optimistic and/or disorganized among us are running out. The clear thinkers don't get to lord their sensible approach over anyone. Instead, they're trampled by the stampeding masses. In a more general sense, one downside of freedom is our vulnerability in the face of what can amount to crowdsourced public policy. Consider the problem of non-vaccinators, aka anti-vaxxers. They don't perceive diseases like measles or HPV as a threat because they've never encountered them. So to declare these diseases a non-threat and stop vaccinating their children. So by behaving ignorantly, they are creating widespread problems that affect everyone in their cohort and sometimes beyond. Measles, for example, could be eradicated worldwide if everybody were vaccinated. Instead, it persists and is making a comeback. As reported by the CDC, last year saw more than 22 outbreaks with well over 1,000 victims here in the U.S., a country where this disease was thought to have been eliminated 20 years ago. The same phenomenon could happen with COVID-19 as frustrated citizens demand an end to shelter in place and/or ignore the rules. By mistaking the success of social distancing for a lack of need for it, they lead us back into danger. Lashing out at the authority they're tired of bending to, they err on the side of undue optimism. Oddly, this is almost the reverse of the toilet paper irrationality. In that case, they're being unduly paranoid about something they have relatively easy influence over. As the Conversation article notes, TP hoarding is an example of zero-risk bias, in which people prefer to try to eliminate one type of possibly superficial risk entirely, rather than do something that would reduce their total risk by a greater amount. In other words, it's easier to hoard toilet paper than to shelter in place. Never mind the return on investment. Where the microcosm breaks down. Fortunately, there is enough toilet paper to go around ultimately, and we'll reach a point where so many people have so much stockpiled, they'll eventually stop hoarding it. Their garages will get so overrun with TP they'd feel silly buying more, and will finally learn to pass up the next opportunity to continue stockpiling. Eventually, the shelves will be replenished, and then the hysteria will die down and we'll go back to normal, which consists of all Americans having enough TP in their homes that they don't worry about it. Supply and demand will once again be in perfect balance. You might call it hoard immunity.
It's terrible.
It's bad. Alas, the world's overall resources don't work like that. There really isn't enough to go around, which is why a lot of people are malnourished, don't have educational opportunities, don't have great access to affordable health care, etc. The supply and demand of money has never been in perfect balance. Just about everybody wants more money, and it never starts to look ridiculous to stockpile it. Industries like advertising and marketing exist to increase demand, irrespective of the target market's standard of living, which in turn drives up monetary greed. This brings us to what may be the harshest, most protracted aspect of this pandemic. Long after the toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and mask shortages are over, when the shelter-in-place rules have finally been relaxed, well after the coronavirus has either run its course or been thwarted by a vaccine, we will likely be stuck in a terrible recession. And unlike the toilet paper shortage, it won't affect people equally. Once again, the have-nots will take it the hardest. Obviously, there's not much I can do about COVID-19 or its economic devastation, but where toilet paper is concerned, I will do my part. I haven't stockpiled any, and I'm not going to. This is my symbolic stand, the simple, tiny gesture I'll make in solidarity. I'll leave some toilet paper for the next guy, and if I run out, so be it. Life will go on. Or not.